Good morning, everyone. My name is Brittany Adams. I'm a sophomore H&FD major here at Virginia Tech, and today I'm going to be talking to you all a little about GMOs, or genetically modified organisms. I like to start this presentation off with a little anecdote. So back in 1984, when scientists were just figuring out how to transfer genes between organisms, some scientists from the Rockefeller Foundation thought that they could use their ability to bring more food to a poor country like the Philippines, where their rice crop was very low in nutrients. So the people from the Rockefeller Foundation went and talked to a few guys from the International Rice Research Institute in the Philippines, and those people were very skeptical about biotechnology and transferring genes in between plants. So these few guys were sitting around a round table, and they all went around to each scientist and asked, if you could transfer a gene, what would be your favorite gene? And they gave it to this guy named Peter Jennings, and automatically he said, yellow endosperm. Endosperm is the starchy part of the grain, and it's the part that you eat. And I'd just like to ask you, if a food has a yellow or orange tint, do you guys know what functional component is in it? Anyone?
Could you repeat that?
What functional component is in a food if it has a yellow or orange tint? Like carrots?
Fruit?
No. Okay, it's beta carotene or vitamin A. Does anybody know what those do for your body? All right. Yes, vitamin A and beta carotene actually help with your eye health, among other functional bodily functions. Okay. So in 1999, they had their first breakthrough, and they added beta carotene to this rice because the children were growing up of rice, and that was a lacking nutrient in their diet. Then in China, some U.S. researchers funded this study that had to do with Chinese children, and it basically just summed up the fact that this beta carotene in the rice was absorbed into their bodies fairly easily. Wang Jing, he was a candidate from the Greenpeace Party. He said China was angry because Americans were using the Chinese children as guinea pigs, and that these Americans never got the approval for the study that they should have, and that the families and children that were involved in the study were never told that this golden rice, right here, was a genetically engineered food. So I just wanted to let you guys know the story because it shows that there are two sides and that this is a very controversial topic. Okay, today's objectives. After today, you'll be able to define what a GMO is. You'll be able to explain the benefits and risks associated with GMOs. And then through those examples, you'll be able to associate positive and negative effects of GMOs on the human body, the environment, and production and manufacturing. Okay, so it's a common knowledge that the world's population is continuously growing larger every year, and GMOs are a way to succumb that. GMOs are living organisms whose genetic material has been artificially manipulated in a laboratory through genetic engineering. Genetic engineering basically means that you take a trait from a plant that is more desirable, and then a trait or gene that is more desirable, and then you place it into the DNA of another organism. All right, let's start with some pros of GMOs. The first pro of a GMO is that it offers higher crop yields, as many of you know. And with the Philippines example, this goes back to providing developing countries with more foods because they're the places where it's not always the best soil or the best situations to grow crops. Also, GMOs can be genetically engineered to be insect repellent or resistant, so you get higher yields because there's less things eating them out as they're growing. Next, we have that GMOs are more economical. Since they are resistant to pests, there's a less need for pesticides and manpower. One example of this is that you can genetically engineer apple trees to grow a certain height so that you only have to have the manpower to pick as many as like an 8 or 9 foot apple tree, whereas if it was taller, you would need more manpower to take care of these plants. All right, GMOs provide stronger crops. GMOs can be genetically engineered to withstand weather fluctuations and extremes. So in places where it's more salty soil or the weather isn't always as great, you'll be able to provide a larger crop yield and provide to more people in need. One example of having a stronger crop is the tomato plant is actually genetically engineered to have a longer shelf life. So after you pick them, they become ripe a little longer after the picking period. Excuse me. Okay. Last we have GMOs can be genetically engineered to include a lacking nutrient, as we saw in the golden rice example. So the Philippine children were lacking beta-carotene in their diet, and by inserting beta-carotene into this rice that they grow up off of, it really helps their diet. Moving on to cons of GMOs. The biggest con of the GMO is that it can develop potential allergies in the body. So when you're transferring genes, you're also mixing proteins. And when you mix proteins, you can actually develop new allergens, or the gene that you transferred from the original species of plant contains the allergen from the original. And you don't know that in the US because GMOs are not regulated. Like, they do not have to be labeled in the US and Canada, but they have to be labeled everywhere else. Okay. Next, we have GMOs decrease biodiversity in the environment. One example of this is that Bt corn pollen kills monarch butterflies. The corn pollen travels through the wind, and when it lands on milkweed, these monarch caterpillars ingest this pollen and it kills them, which decreases their existence in the environment and decreases the level of biodiversity. One thing that I would research if I was doing this project again is if all seeds for GMOs come from the same place, that means that all the fruits would be the same. And then if they end up to not be resistant, wouldn't that mean if one virus gets in, can it knock out the whole crop? That's one thing to think about. Okay, GMOs are not 100% environmentally friendly. Some substances haven't been proven safe to the environment. And the worst part about GMOs is that these substances are hidden from the public. Last, we have that GMOs decrease antibiotic efficacy. GMOs have antibiotic features that, when eaten, they persist in our bodies, which can actually deem antibiotics that we're taking at present ineffective. All right. So my conclusions are, since this is a very controversial issue, as we have seen in this class previously, it is really up to you as individuals to do your own research and to discover your own viewpoint. I know that you guys are pretty set in stone on which viewpoints you do hold, but I would really like you to research with an unbiased opinion and to look at statistical studies instead of what does another person who has the same viewpoint as me say GMOs do. Does anybody have any questions?